Welcome to the Shore Oak Podcast. I'm your host, Tom Casano, and in today's episode, we're speaking with Brian Dean. I almost want to introduce Brian Dean as like the king of SEO. He's the founder of Backlinko, and if you've never heard of Brian, he's had a massive impact in influencing the SEO industry. He's highly visible. His website, Backlinko, has a ton of valuable information, a huge email list, a ton of traffic every month, and I've personally learned just a ton from Brian over the years from reading the content on Backlinko, watching his videos. He's been very inspirational, and I've been asking him to come on the podcast for like the last 8 months, and he finally was able to and had time. You're going to hear some roosters in the background. He's in Lisbon right now in Portugal. He said we had about 30 minutes to record, and we went for about an hour or so. And I leave SEO for the end because you can really learn just about everything from Brian about SEO from his website, Backlinko, or from his courses. But I really want to know more about Brian's life and business as well, and his entrepreneurship. So we're going to talk about SEO at the end, and in this episode, you're going to learn a ton of stuff. The two biggest inflection points in him growing Backlinko, his approach to growing a startup website, his link building tactic that is the least effort for the greatest results. You're going to learn about voice search and YouTube SEO. So if you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe. Here's Brian. Hey, Brian, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tom.
Yeah, so I wanted to first dive in about you as a person, your lifestyle. You're from Rhode Island, you just said, and where have you been living like in the last several years? I thought you were living in Berlin for a while. You traveling around?
I was living in Berlin. I spent like the last 3 years on and off in Berlin. That was like my home base, and then I'd go different places and spend some time there. And about 6 months ago, I left Berlin and just sort of like traveled around. A lot of it in the States, actually. Spent a lot of time in Miami, some time in Canada, and then I ended up coming to Lisbon. I had been here a bunch of times already, but decided to spend some time here. I love Berlin. It's a great city, but I wanted like the sun and a bit more chilled atmosphere and like more nature. And so here I am. I've been here for about 3 months. Who knows how long it'll be, but it's good right now.
That's cool. Would you consider yourself like a digital nomad? It's kind of like you'll settle down a little while somewhere and then maybe move off, or?
Yeah, there's a thing called slow mad, like a digital slow mad. I guess I'm more like that. I used to be like a digital nomad where I'd be, a week here, a week there, traveling all around. But first of all, you can't get any work done like that, despite what those digital nomads will say. I never met a baller digital nomad yet who's like, yeah, I'm doing great. They're usually like scraping by. They're living in Chiang Mai on like $500 a month, trying to just like eat pad thai 3 times a day so they can live. That's my experience with digital nomads. And I was one of them, not hating. But if you want, and also I'm old. Like I'm just too old to like do a day here, 2 days there. Like now I go on trips. Like I'm going to go somewhere. I'll do like 2 weeks here or 3 weeks there, kind of like a normal thing. I guess I just travel a bit more often, but I definitely don't do like the digital nomad lifestyle anymore.
And so are there any specific conferences that you will normally attend or speak at, or are you kind of like not really in that scene so much?
I'm not really. I've been to a couple. I've spoken at a bunch of conferences. I slowed that down a lot. The only one I spoke at last year was a digital nomad conference, ironically enough. And it was fun. I did a Q&A and it was great because digital nomads are cool. I tend to be cool people. Despite not having any money. And it was fun. So other than that, I don't do a lot of talks, especially at marketing conferences because people are so boring. And I don't really feel like I get a lot of it. Like I do this huge amount of preparation because I'm one of those people, I can't just do something. Like it's got to be a huge to do. Like if I'm going to do a talk, it has to be like the greatest talk of all time. So I spend weeks on this talk, putting it all together, practicing a million times in the mirror, doing it in front of people, getting feedback. And then I go on stage and there's like 100 people in the audience. And it's great. You impact those 100 people a lot more than you would with a blog post or a video. But the scale is so limited. And I was doing it so much. I felt like in 2015 and 16, I did it a lot. I felt like I was like a traveling salesman. I was like getting my stuff in a hotel. Usually the organizers are good with putting together speakers dinners and things. So there's a social aspect. But it wasn't like, it didn't feel like travel. It was kind of a weird thing. Like I remember going to like Bucharest, Romania. And I was like, I'd probably never go there. So I thought, hell, I'll go to a conference in Romania. What the hell? And I went, and it was great. The organizers were awesome, and I had fun, but it wasn't like a trip. It was business, was permeated everything. So it didn't really feel like a vacation either.
Totally.
So about a year and a half ago, I decided to basically stop speaking. And I made a couple exceptions if the conference seems fun. Like I'm speaking at TravelCon coming up in September in Austin. And that's just all travel writers are going to that. So it's like to help travel bloggers.
Well, I think this kind of like goes to a more of a principle I feel like you live by, which is like you'll cut something out if it's kind of pointless or if it's not working for you. And I think you also have the ability to really focus on stuff. And actually, that was one of the next things I wanted to ask you about. I wanted to ask you about like how many hours a week you work, what your typical work day looks like, and then what are your most important activities, which kind of speaks to that as well.
So I usually work, it depends a lot on the week and what's going on, but I'm pretty routine oriented. Like I pretty much get up and do the same thing every day. So I would say on average, I work from 10 to 2:30 or 3. It expands a lot if like I have a post coming out or as a project, or it shrinks if there's less stuff. But for the most part, I try to write every day and create something every day. So at least I work 2 or 3 hours just on writing something.
That's for backlinko.com?
Backlinko, everything's for Backlinko. So like it's a video or a blog post or an email or a course content. I'm doing something in the morning every day, and usually 5 or 6. I'm not like a long hours guy. I definitely don't like get up early and late. I've been there, done that. It doesn't really work for me. So
I wanted to ask you about that. So what's your philosophy on like the grind or the hustle, or is it kind of like get more output from less time? How do you view all that? Because there's a lot about, the whole Gary Vaynerchuk philosophy permeates like all entrepreneurship.
Of course, as it should. He's a smart guy. And I actually watch his stuff and understand where he's coming from. I think in the early days, it is good to work a lot because you don't know anything. Like when I first started, I worked a lot more and I got more done. Honestly, there is something to the fact that if you have 10 hours a day to do something, it'll take 10 hours, right? Parkinson's theory. But there is something too to like, if you work 5 hours a day and you work 10, you're going to get more with 10 for sure in most cases. And that's what I was doing most days. I remember I had a cutoff. I would get up early, like 6, start at 7, and I had a cutoff that would end at 7. So I worked pretty much 12 hours a day a lot in the early days. And I think that was good because I got to figure out what worked, what didn't. I tested tons of different stuff all over the place, what routines worked for me, what was getting the most results, what wasn't working. And if I only was doing these like little increments, I wouldn't really learn that fast. And over the years of doing it, I've sort of figured out what works best, what doesn't, so I can focus on just doing that thing and ignoring everything else. But in the early days, I didn't know what to ignore and what to focus on. And that was actually a helpful exercise.
So what is that thing now? You said writing. That sounds like very central. Mm-hmm. Is that the thing, or is there another thing that's like the most important activity or one of the most important activities?
There's nothing more important than creating. It definitely depends on the business. For me, and running a blog, obviously, that creating content is super important. So I focus on that every day. I get up and I write first thing. I don't do email. I don't check social media. I don't check ESPN. I wait until that stuff in the afternoon. The morning is writing. Everyone knows it on my team. I don't even have Slack. So I don't check anything basically. So then I could just focus on that. And then even if the rest of the day goes wrong, like there's emails that they take, a long time to reply to, or I'm getting a lot of stuff in my inbox, or some social media thing happens. At least I got that done. And that's the most important thing, because if I'm not creating something, there's no reason to really read the blog.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, my understanding is there's a lot of like great stuff on the blog that's evergreen, and maybe if it's been there I know you update stuff, and so why is it so important to constantly be creating? Because there might be stuff you've written over the last few years that's still just as good today, or how do you view that?
That's a good point. When I say create, it doesn't mean writing from scratch. Creating just sounds kind of like hoity-toity. Like I get up and I create every day.
Maybe you enjoy that.
Sound like that. It's true. I am creating, but it's just something about it rubs me the wrong way. It just sounds like I'm like this artist and I get up. I'm definitely not. So writing, it's like just like a task, and it's more fits me. But creating can just be like updating old stuff. I'm updating old stuff constantly, as you said. Like I would say I spend almost half the time writing new stuff and half the time updating and improving old stuff. So it doesn't have to be writing from scratch, but there's a lot of things in SEO in my industry get outdated constantly. Screenshots get outdated all the time. Google changes and I have to create content that better fits Google's standards, new algorithm updates and whatnot. I'm also running experiments, so I have to put stuff out with different things and see what's going on. That's all kind of writing. It's not always blank page writing something new. In fact, that's probably only half the time doing that.
Totally. That's awesome. No, I love how you roll. And so how do you divide up? Do you have any view on like the year, the month, the quarter? Like, do you look at the longer time frames like that in your work?
Yeah, I was doing this thing called 90-day year. But it was super intense, man. Dude, It's cool. It's kind of like it sounds. It's like you try to do yearly goals in 90 days. So it's good for just reframing your mind. So I did it last year for the first quarter. And what you do is you set out your yearly goals just like you normally would, like as if you had the whole year. And then you just try to do them in 90 days. There's a lot more to it than that, and how to break it down and accomplish it. It's a whole course about it that's very helpful by Todd Herman. But the essence is that. But it's super stressful because it's like you're really trying to do a year's worth of work in 90 days. It helps in a lot of ways because it helps you cut out a lot of stuff. Like you wouldn't say yes to things because you're like, I only have 90 days to do this.
Yeah.
But it's also a bit stressful. So now my goal is more for the year. I have a theme that my whole team knows about. So last year it was creating product. We're making the products better. So I have a flagship course that was good, but it needed a new version. 3.0 that needed updated stuff because of Google changes and also improvements and more examples and things like that. So I did that. And I also created a new course from scratch about YouTube. This is not a plug. You don't have to buy it. I don't care. But it's just to describe the process. And then because I feel like that was a thing that if my product was good, but not really I need it to be like a little bit better. So worked on that. And then this year is all about the audience. That's probably another reason I'm writing so much is that it's building the email list, getting more traffic, getting higher rankings to Google, social media followers, YouTube channel. And then next year is more focus on sales. So now that we have the product and the audience, then it's time to work on the sales process, which is pretty good. Like we have a decent sales process, but again, good is the enemy of great, as I like to say. And it could be a lot better, but I don't focus on it because I'm focused on building the product and the audience. So I kind of go by themes and then everyone is aligned around working on that stuff.
Cool. I like that. Okay, let's shift over now towards more business stuff. I'm dying to ask you. So one of my first questions is like you just made a decision, I guess, at some point that you're going to sell courses in education versus I think maybe at some point in the past you were a consultant, or there's the agency model, which I have, or I think you were doing affiliate sites back in the day. So of those four kind of business models, you went with education and courses, and I'm curious why not the other three?
So I like let's just break it down why each one has its pros and cons.
You're right.
So there's no like, this is the best business model for 2018. So one, agency has a lot of pros. You can start right away. The cash flow can be pretty good because people can pay you a lot. I used to run an agency, so I know it well. You don't need that many customers. Like 10 clients can sustain a business pretty much if they're big enough, or 20. The problem with that model is scaling is really hard. Selling it is really hard because you need to convince them that you're the person they should choose, or you're the company they should choose. It's very difficult. And then if you staff up, it actually becomes a cash flow problem as you try to scale. It's really tricky. So that one is not for me. And there's a lot of like, especially SEO agency, it's a lot of like, I was getting emails from people like, hey, it dropped from like 7 to 5. What happened? I was like, I don't like that. So the affiliate marketing model is actually really good. The problem is you don't control the product. So you're basically like a media company. You have to just get tons of traffic and attention on your brand. And then everything relies on the affiliate part, which you have very little control over. And people have a lot of leverage over you unless you're huge. And also usually those affiliate sites, not always, are reliant on one traffic source like Google or Instagram or one traffic source that can change in an instant and then you're done. That's the problem with that one. And then consulting, it's not scalable because you got to do, your hourly thing or whatever you charge. The information product model, the pro is that it's super scalable. You create one course like SaaS and you can sell it to thousands of people. And thousands of people can benefit from it. has a high value because, especially as there's more content out there, there's actually more demand for courses because people just want like the step-by-step plan. They don't want to read 1,000 blog posts. The con is the ceiling's low on how huge the company can be. Like making 8 figures in courses is like running the 4-minute mile. Like it's so rare and hard. With an agency, it's very doable. With a lot of the other models, it's very doable. But with courses, you can hit 7 figures pretty quick if you know what you're doing. Going from 7 to 8 is like ridiculously hard. Why that is, I have my theories. I don't know. So that's the big downside is the cap that you can.
But the margins are much higher.
The margins are great because your course it's cheap to make and it's multiplies.
You sell another one, it costs you a penny.
Yeah, exactly. It's like SaaS in that way.
Yeah.
But SaaS has that's a whole different thing.
There's that rooster.
Business model under the sun.
I love that rooster. So I've got to ask you something. I've noticed, or maybe you've said this. I hear that rooster. Does the rooster have a name? Is it like?
There's a couple. So there's more. We name the cats. There's a lot of cats that walk across this little wall over here. We have like Stripey and Blackie, that me and my girlfriend. But we don't have names for the roosters because I'm not that good with roosters. I can't tell the difference between them. And they go off like this, like 4 or 5 cock-a-doodle-doos in a row, and then nothing, as you'll hear. Like they get out of their system and then they're done. So he'll stop in a minute.
No, that's fine. I like it. I have to ask you about copywriting because I've noticed from reading your emails, from reading your blog, I feel like you must have learned copywriting somewhere along the way, and I think it's had a big impact. Is that true?
Which is true.
Did you like learn copywriting or do a deep dive into it and you like actively apply it into all your content writing, your emails?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I was a freelance writer before I ever started the internet marketing thing. And from there, I started with articles and I realized the money in that wasn't very good. It's like a commodity thing. And it was a race to the bottom. Like, I was trying to charge $50 an article and another guy's charging 20. And especially this is before quality content really mattered. Like you just needed content to rank in Google. So why would they pay me 50 when they can pay someone 20 and get 500 words? Like it wasn't a good model. So I switched over to doing more like sales letters and product pages for supplements, sales emails, stuff that has high value.
Yeah.
But it's a bit trickier to do. Like you can't just take someone off the street. Anyone off the street, just grab them. They can write 500 words about something, right? But to write a sales letter that's like huge, long about a product, blah, 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 it's really hard. I learned that the hard way because I saw a sales letter job on Elance. I was on Elance back in the day. And I was like, let me try and just bid on it. I tried it and I got the job. And from there, I had to figure out how to write a sales letter. And pretty much I bought copywriting ebooks. I read a bunch of stuff online. And more importantly, I just studied like other people's work and thought, what is it? Like, what are the things that tie them all together? And then I realized that copywriting is not that complicated. Like it's seen as this dark art of masters like David Ogilvy and guys like that who are brilliant. But it's really like most people say if they like a writing style, it's mostly because it's easy to read. And that's the number one thing. If for copywriting, there's no like turn of phrase that's going to impress anybody. It's all about just making it really simple language that's really easy to read and flows well. That's pretty much all there is to it. And it helps a lot because when you want to read something like a blog post about SEO, not the most exciting thing in the world, let's face it. So unless it's really well written, you're not going to read it.
Yeah, and I think also like making it compelling, and you'll say something that'll kind of leave the person like wanting to read more to get to what. Okay, in the interest of time, I want to jump to like other things. Really quickly, when Backlinko was, or you were relatively quote unquote unknown, so was there this point in the journey like? Was there any one breakthrough, or was it just a lot of hustle and grind for a couple of years? I remember on one of the AMAs, you said you were guest posting nonstop. You were doing interviews. You were like everywhere, so you could be found everywhere. Is that just what it amounts to scale Backlinko to today from being virtually unknown before?
No, there were a couple inflection points. Like it's kind of like the early days, like I was saying. You throw a bunch of stuff against the wall and see what sticks. And most of those guest posts I did were pretty much pointless. Most of the interviews were pretty much pointless in the sense that they didn't bring me anything. Like it didn't end up helping, but a handful did. And the one thing that really helped me was in the early days, I got in touch with Neil Patel, founder of Quick Sprout and Kissmetrics and stuff. And he was really supportive of me from the very early days. Like a month after I started the blog, I reached out to him and we worked together on a project, this thing called the Advanced Guide to Link Building. And it did really well, and it got on his blog and got featured on there, and tons of people found me from that. So that was like one big inflection point. The other was I published this Google's 200 ranking factors post, and that was another one that helped kind of separate me from the other SEO blogs. Because back when I started, it was a lot more competitive. Like right now, there's no good SEO blogs basically. So, but back when I started, there were like 15 or 20 that were actually really good. So it's hard to stand out, and that post helped me stand out. So yeah, there were a couple inflection points, but overall, like if I didn't throw all that stuff against the wall, I'd have to be really lucky if I just did like those X 5 things again. I wouldn't know which 5 were going to have the biggest impact and the 50 that weren't. So I had to try them all.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. They're all experiments. So is there any particular things you learned from working with Neil Patel?
So much. I've learned a lot from him. He's super smart. The number one thing I think I learned from him was don't be afraid to invest in your content. So one of the things people say is like, oh, I'm putting out great content. It's really good. But it's like, well, how much time are you putting into it? How much money are you spending on it? So when we did that Advanced Guide to Link Building, we worked on writing it together, and he did the design and the coding all himself. And he told me he spent $8,000 on the design and coding, which is crazy to me at the time. I've spent a lot more on that on content since then. But at the time, that was crazy. $8,000 on one piece of content. Like, you can hire writers from Elance for $20 an article. And I was coming from that world relatively recently. So 8,000 was nuts. But he told me, you got to invest in your content. It pays off. Like the ROI is just stupid. People have this sticker shock mentality. But if you look at the ROI of something like that, it pays off crazy amounts over the long term. And no one else is willing to do it. So that was one thing I learned from him, and I definitely applied because I spent a lot of time and money on content, and it's almost always paid off. Because content is relatively cheap from the benefit you can get from it long term. Like, if you're paying for traffic on Facebook, if you spend $8K a month, that's not that much. But if you created one post that brings that many visitors that month, you already got your money back. Plus, in the future, all the links and traffic and things like that. It's a great deal. And no one else is doing it. So that was one thing I learned. Another is I was surprised at how much he trusted me to come up with ideas and write things, even though I was new. So if I was him, I'm a control freak. I would be like, someone sent me a draft to send him a million edits and stuff. He sent me some feedback, but it wasn't that like crazy considering I was brand new. So he kind of trusted me. So I think now that I take someone on my team, I figure I give him more like leeway than I probably would have if it was my own like inclination to be a control freak.
Who would the other who would be some entrepreneurs that you admire, look up to, or that you would say are an influence on you, or any people your close friends that would be well known, like Neil? Or
well, yeah, Neil's very well known. He's been super helpful and taught me a lot over the years. Other people that I don't necessarily know but I look up to is Tim Ferriss is one that a lot of people know, obviously, because he's a huge deal. And he's really, I don't know, he's kind of almost the model of someone I look to. And I'm like, that is awesome. Like the way he has his business and life set up, it's the model. Because he could be making stupid money with having seminars and the 4-hour this and 4-hour that. And he just doesn't want to. He's like, I have my money. I want to have an impact on the world. He does a podcast instead. He could have done, when the 4-Hour Workweek came out, he could have been doing like so much scammy seminars and all this stuff. He didn't do any of that because he didn't want to. And I just respect the fact that he's like, I'm going to do it my way and ignore all the opportunities that come my way and just do my thing. Another guy I like a lot is Ramit Sethi, founder of I Will Teach You to Be Rich. Same token, he's just a smart guy who just built his thing from scratch. I always like when people start from nothing, like they started from the total ground floor, didn't know anybody, didn't have any connections, and blew up. And he's one of them I respect for that reason. Another person who's in that same boat is Marie Forleo. She's just like insanely smart, super charismatic, and has a ridiculous following, and also started as just like doing, videos in her apartment. And now her videos are like Oprah episodes. It's amazing. So those are 3 that come to mind.
Awesome. Cool. Good answers. You recently bought Point Blank SEO from John Cooper. I got that
Mm-hmm.
email not that long ago. So, what was the business decision there, and how do you plan to use the website or the assets?
I'm actually not sure exactly what I'm going to do with the site at this point. So the reason that came about was that I had been following John for a long time. One of those guest posts that I wrote back in the day was for Point Blank SEO. If you go back in the archives, I'm in there. I don't know if it's from like 2013. And I know John from that, and we met up a couple times since then. And I know that he's busy with his agency. And he hasn't really done much with the blog because he's focused on that. And he just happens a lot with people. They start a blog, it's going well, and they enjoy it, and then they just aren't as interested in it anymore. It happens all the times with blogs because they have another project usually, and that's his other project was his agency. And also writing about link building, it's kind of tough because you don't want to give away what's working for you because then it stops working, right? Because marketers ruin everything, as Gary Vee says. So I think he just it wasn't really practical to run the blog anymore. But on the other hand, what are you going to do with it? So I reached out to him and thought maybe I could do something with it. I'm not exactly sure. Probably merge the two sites somehow and take his kind of best content and give it an update. Because some of it's just perfect like it is, kind of timeless. And others have some outdated stuff like links that don't work or tools that aren't around anymore or things like that. So it just needs an update. So I'll probably end up doing that, but I'm not exactly sure at this point.
And that kind of another question I wanted to ask, because you give away so much amazing stuff just right there on backlinko.com. Where do you draw the line, or what's your philosophy on giving away amazing stuff, but then you have to have something that's like you pay for in the course, or maybe that's like the how-to walkthrough plan is what people are paying for? How do you draw that line, or what's your philosophy there?
So there's two kind of thought processes I have with that. So one is people are always willing to pay for like you said, a how-to, a step-by-step blueprint. For the same reason, dude, if I was starting a podcast tomorrow, the last thing I would do is read blog posts from people who have no idea what they're talking about, who've never done a podcast in their life, 5 tips for starting a podcast, or 10 things you need to know. Huge waste of time. The first thing I type into Google is podcasting course, or I just buy Pat Flynn. I know he has a podcast.
Right,
course.
right.
I just buy that.
Oh, his is free, I think, anyway, but right, yeah.
But if I didn't know his, then I would, if I didn't know about Pat, I literally start, I'm like the best customer ever. I would search a podcasting course. If one looked halfway decent, I would plunk down whatever it cost and buy it. And there's a lot of people like me because there's so much content out there that it's overwhelming and it's hard to make heads or tails of it. And even worse, it's hard to know what you actually do at the end of the day. You could spend all day reading, but you don't know what to actually do. So even if I distilled some of the best content from Backlinko into a step-by-step plan, that would be enough. But I don't want to do that because I think that's shady. So I also have a bunch of strategies that I never talk about on the blog that are sort of walled off. So what I've done is I have this course that's step-by-step, and the strategies in there are only in the course. I will never talk about them on a podcast or a guest post or on the blog, and they're walled off forever. And then everything else is pretty much fair game. That's how I look at it. That way everybody's happy and I can still put out cool stuff.
Cool. I'm going to try to go really rapid fire through questions. Mm-hmm. If you started
we're good with time. No worries. Let's get a guy out of the sun. Yeah, it's going to move a little bit.
Okay.
Again,
all right, cool. If you started a brand new website today, you bought a new domain and you wanted to kill it with SEO, what are the things you would focus on and execute for I don't know if it's the first 3 months, 6 months, 12 months?
Well, it depends on the time frame of which one.
Well, let's say you want to create the most value as quickly as possible, but obviously it's going to take time. So maybe you choose the time frame, and then what would be the activities? Is it link building? Is it content? Is it other?
So for the first thing I do, like step one, I want to do it step by step, is
this is a course. We're going to sell this part.
By step. Dude, sell it. Make a ton of money. I don't care. So the first thing I do is look at the positioning of the site. So mentally, what is going to be different about your blog versus the hundreds of other sites that are already out there on that topic? That's the first thing. So a lot of people they see a site blow up. They're like, oh, he puts out great stuff, or his social media strategy was so good, or link building and SEO. And that stuff all helps. But most blogs that blow up started with a small niche. So in the case of Backlinko, when I started, if you remember back in the day, it was all about link building. Like my site was all about white hat link building strategies. That's it. Everything was about link building. I only wrote about link building strategies, case studies. I wrote about link building until I was blue in the face because there weren't as many blogs out there that were about link building. And if I just came out and said, hey, I'm an SEO blog, or even worse, I'm a marketing blog, I'd instantly get thrown together with all those other marketing and SEO blogs, and I would be invisible because no one knows who I was. No one knows who I am. So I would come up with a positioning that separates you, preferably a really tiny niche. So for example, if you want to teach people how to grow on YouTube, you want to be like the YouTube SEO guy, or the person who helps people shoot videos in their office, or the YouTube subscriber person, the subscriber gal. I'm all about getting you more subscribers. Then from there, you can branch out to other topics.
So let's assume that we've got So let's assume that we've got the niche now. But I'm thinking more tactically for SEO, content, links, or like how would you go about that?
So once I have that down, then the reason that's important is then the next step is keywords and topics.
Right.
And if you don't have that niche, you're just going to go all over the place, and you're going to be like, okay, I have an article about YouTube SEO. I have another one about getting subscribers, and I have another one about titles. I have another one about thumbnails, and you're just going to blend in. So those keywords are really important, because then every time someone searches for anything related to your topic, you're going to be the expert, and you're going to be the one that comes up. So that's the next thing I would do, is focus on that topic and just do it to death. Find every keyword, even if they don't get searched for a ton, and if you can write a good piece of content about it that's different than what's out there and better, then I would do that and just continue. So just go boom, boom, boom down the list until you can't stand the topic anymore, until it makes you sick to even think about it. That's how you know you're ready to move on to another topic. And then you just do the same thing, divide and conquer. You do that one topic and then move along. And before you know it, you'll be an expert. Guaranteed.
No, but come on. But hold on. Okay. We choose the niche. We do the keyword research. We write 100,000 words of content, right? We have to do link building. I mean, we're leaving out huge stuff here.
Of course, man. But I mean, I'm just giving you the broad strokes, because it's really hard to say, okay, I mean, this is basically like a blog, you need like a blogging course that teaches you how to do all this stuff. But I'm just giving you the broad strokes. So you get the keywords. We'll break it down a little bit more. Sorry if I rushed ahead to when you're rich, but that's the fun part. So the next thing I do with the keywords is you got to create like ridiculous content around each one, especially if you're starting out. Even it doesn't matter, but especially if you're starting out, most people struggle with their site and content marketing and SEO because their content isn't good enough. Like 99% of people send me their site, say, I don't know, it's not ranking. Their site isn't any good. Why would anyone share it? Why would anyone even go to the site? There's so many others that are better. So you really have to create a better mousetrap. That's with every piece of content that you create, and optimize it around different keywords. Then that's the SEO part. And then link building, which is a big part, is like a whole nother world. There's so many ways to do link building with outreach and broken link building and da-da-da. It's very important when you're first starting out, because if you have no links, like there's a huge difference between like 50 links and no links. And especially psychologically, like if you're just starting out and you're pumping out content and not getting any traffic, of course, you don't have any links. And then you get 50, all of a sudden your traffic chart goes like this. Of course, it's going from like 5 visitors a day to 7 or 8, but that's a big difference. It's almost double. And that's what those 50 links can do. And then there's a phenomenon in SEO where the rich get richer. So if you start to rank for stuff, more people will see it and are more likely to link to it. And you start to get some natural links for the first time. Of course, you're going to have to hustle in the early days and do a lot of outreach. But once you get those first like 50 or 100, it makes a big difference in your rankings. So that would be another thing I'd work on as I'm working on content. That's why you don't want to put out that much when you're first starting, because you have so much to do. Like, got to put out content and do link building at the same time. So I just focus on putting out great stuff and then link building. And there's so much, dude, there's a design.
I know.
And
this could be like a 2-hour.
There's like building an email list, which is also a big part of growing a site.
Well, let me
relationships with other people. Like, dude, there's so much to it.
No, it's true. It's very true. I want to shift to this other question, which I think is not necessarily the right question, but I want to ask it, and I'm a little afraid of your reaction. What form of link building would you say requires the least amount of effort for the greatest results?
I would say broken link building.
Really?
Yeah, because it has the highest response rate. So you're getting more links for the emails that you send out. So for the amount of effort, like, let's put it this way. Most link building is like this. You link to X, I have Y, you should link to me too, right? It's all like that. But the difference with the time difference of finding a broken link, as opposed to saying you link to X, saying you link to X and it's broken, and I have Y and it's the same or similar or better, and it can replace it, the response rate is like 5 to 10 times. And it only takes a couple minutes to find that broken link as opposed to just spamming people. So I think it's actually that's what I focus on for link building for the most part when I'm doing stuff.
Interesting.
Nowadays.
I've had a different experience, but maybe I'm just tactically was doing something wrong, because a lot of the websites, they like wouldn't go back. It'd be like a website that was sitting for the last 5 years, and then I'll go back and edit it. And they kind of
it depends. That's why you got to find recent broken links. So that's something I teach in the course. I don't want to plug it, but I got to.
Hey, listen, it's behind the wall.
I learned that the hard way too, because I was reaching out to old abandoned sites about old abandoned sites they're linking to, and of course they don't care. I don't even know why they have this site up, but that happened a lot. And that's why there's ways to find broken links that are relatively recent, and that makes all the difference, because the site might have linked to it like 2 months ago, and they're still interested in keeping that piece of content relevant. So the other tactical thing is to make sure your content is a good fit for the replacement. A lot of people are like, you link to this thing about keyword research. I have a post about link building. It'll replace it. It's like, no, it doesn't make any sense, especially because most links are in blog posts and articles where they reference one specific thing. They'll say like, 55% of blah, 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 blah. If your page doesn't have 55% of blah, 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 it's not a good replacement. So you got to make your page a good replacement for the broken link. That's another mistake I see a lot of people make. The closer it is, the better, obviously. A lot, because they're just lazy. The other thing, dude, I'm going to go a little link building rant. The biggest mistake people make with link building is that they make the other person do all the work. They're like, hey, I have this piece of content. Will you link to it? It's like, where? Where should I link to it? How should I link to it? If you make my life easier, you have a chance. It's already a low percentage gain, link building. You're talking like 2 to 5% placement rate. But if you're just lazy and you're like, hey, I have this piece of content, I might make a good fit for the page. I'm like, where on the page? What should I link to it from? That's why the broken link building works so well, because you're like, you link to this thing right here in this post, it's broken.
Or like Gestographics was a big
that was another good
thing in that. Yeah.
Here you go. Here's everything you need. Like,
right.
That's why Gestographics is great. That's another strategy that still works really well. Here's everything you need. Infographic, an intro. You just have to literally copy
and paste it and publish.
Like that kind of link building that's actually white hat is pretty hard to come across. But that's why it works so well. If you just email someone and say, hey, I get these emails constantly from people that are just like, hey, I have a piece of content similar to something you link to. Will you link to me too? In an article. But how? I have to rewrite something. Are you you must be out of your mind to think I'm going to do that. But if you can make it easy, that's why I like broken link building, for that reason. Yeah. And also, it legitimately helps people. So, a page with a broken link kind of sucks. If you click on it, it reflects poorly on the person that wrote it. So it's a win-win-win all the way around, for the reader, for the publisher, and for you. And that's why I think, in terms of like it's not low effort, but for the effort you put in, you tend to get more links.
I love that I got you fired up on this topic. I want to go more, but let me shift one more time. So the more features in the SERPs, there's more featured snippets, and answers can be given right there. I think Rand Fishkin had something where like the actual clicks in the SERPs were dropping in mobile well enough, and then the other part of that is with voice search, which as of this moment isn't a big thing, but over the next few years can be a much bigger thing. So both of those kind of point to the fact that webmasters or bloggers, whomever, can be getting less direct traffic from Google, and Google can either provide the answer so what do you make of that? Because I think there's a lot of fear, kind of like SEO, but there's the whole SEO is dead, that's been said 1,000 times, but how do you look at that? As how do we adjust, or what does an SEO do in terms of these things changing in how Google is?
So I have a couple thoughts. One is that I wouldn't see these things as threats necessarily, because Google's business model is hurt if they provide if voice search gets huge, which I think it is going to get pretty big, and everyone's searching with Google Home instead of Google. How does Google make money? So it behooves them to try to have a results of some kind. You know what I'm saying? Like, for example, if tomorrow everyone searched for the same things but on Google Home, Google will go out of business.
But wouldn't they just change it, and when they're giving the answer, they say, and this answer is sponsored by?
Oh, that they might have to do that in the future. But I'm saying their whole business model for 20 years has been based on people seeing a mix of organic and paid results and clicking. The problem is the organic results are becoming organic results. And it's becoming more of an answer engine that people are getting an answer to the question. So I have a couple thoughts. One is that for right now, the best thing you can do is like get in the featured snippet spot, rank higher as possible. To give you a little case study, this week I popped into the 9 spot for the keyword SEO after the whole August 1st update. I'm going between 9 and 11 right now, but I was 9 for a few days straight. You're thinking, man, okay, it's 9 sucks, but it's 110,000 searches a month or whatever it is. This is going to be great. Like it's going to huge boost in this page. 0 change in organic traffic to that page. Now it's only a couple of days, so I can't look at the search console to see like how many clicks I got, but I would estimate it was like 5.
That's so weird. Because no one goes to position 9 or
no
what?
one goes. Yeah, position 9 is
so
like
ridiculous.
I think like 5 is the new 20. Like I don't think people go even 8 anymore.
Yeah.
So the thing is, getting first page rankings is like it's nice, but and search visibility and all that stuff that a lot of crap people talk about is total nonsense. It's all about getting like top 3. Like there's almost no results after that. They don't matter. And that's just one example. But I mean, to give you an idea, that keyword doesn't even have a featured snippet. So it's not like people are getting the answer right away. Like there are 10 blue links and they're just not even getting to mine. And I know the click-through rate at 9 is bad, but I mean, come on, man, 110,000 searches a month. And it was like flat. It was exactly the same amount of organic traffic to that page. You'd think you'd get a little bump.
Yeah.
Right? I was doing fucking backflips when I saw I was in the first page for SEO. And then I'm like, I can't wait to see how much more traffic. None. I was surprised. So there's definitely something to that fact that there's just less organic clicks. My big thought that I'll end, not this week, you can ask me another question. I like talking to you. But on this question, my big thought is that what's the alternative? What do you recommend if there's no SEO? Facebook? That's 100 times worse. The traffic sucks anyway, and it's hard to get in front of people organically, right? Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, YouTube is good, but even that, YouTube, you can get a lot of views, but the percentage of people that click through is, talk about low click-through rate. The amount of people that actually click through to your site. It's nice. You can get great traffic from YouTube, but can't be your primary source of traffic. And you're still leveraged the same way. If something changes, you're in trouble. You should always diversify your traffic sources. I try to do that a lot. So in terms of like a channel, they all have challenges. We're SEO people, so we focus on featured snippets and ads above the fold. But most like just kind of general marketers or CMOs, they love SEO because they've tried it all, right? And they're like, this is still the best. It's targeted traffic of people searching for what we sell. And maybe we get half the clicks we did 10 years ago, but I'll take it. So that's sort of my thought on it, is that there's no real alternative. Someone asked me that a couple of years ago. It was like, what else are you going to do?
Well, I guess not in terms of channels. I guess maybe to re-ask the question, because I know you just put out a piece of content about a voice search. And then I think in there you had a section on like the actionable stuff. So let's say one day in the future, most searches are done over voice and not someone looking at a web page and clicking on a thing. So then what is like the game? What is the play there? Which is it like a branded thing? Like, oh, this answer was provided by Backlinko, or is it like a branding thing, or like how do you turn voice answers or voice search into, I guess it wouldn't really turn into traffic, or I don't even know what it would be.
Well, that's why I want to point out voice search is not just home devices like Google Home and Amazon Alexa. That's not even most voice searches. Voice search is also on your phone. Microsoft has data that 25% of desktop searches on Cortana are voice searches. 20% of mobile searches are voice searches, and that's growing really fast as people get more comfortable using voice search in public. So voice search is not just home devices. For that question, I don't have an answer. Like, yeah, is it nice if they say, backlinko.com according to them? Sure. Branding, I guess. But compared to getting a visitor to your website and then an email list and then blah, 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 it's crap. But for Google, it's also crap, like I was saying before. So I don't think they're going to try to move everyone to using Google Home, because they're eating their own lunch if they do that. At the same time, I'm talking about voice search is huge, but just in terms of how people search, the device is almost irrelevant, because on desktop, people are going to start searching more with their voice. With their phone, 20% are already. And on Google Home, it's obviously 100%. So that's one thing about voice search. In terms of the benefit you get, if there's going to be some people who won't search on Google and they'll search using a home device instead. It's the same thing with feature snippet a couple of years ago. If your if your content could just be summarized in like 29 words and given out, it's probably not that valuable anyway. It's like all those people who used to, like all those celebrity birthday websites, and they'd be like, how old is Leonardo DiCaprio or something like that. And their traffic went to like 0, or the distance between, X and Y. There are tons of sites with that, like distance between New York and Boston. And now they're just a feature snippet, so no one has a reason to click. So that's why if your content's really good and nuanced and valuable, like Wait But Why or Nerd Fitness or Mark Manson's site, you don't have to worry as much about that, because you're not getting just people like quick little answers and then they'll forget about you the next moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a really good point. It's more like reading a book or reading an authoritative, deeper piece of content versus the 30-word answer. Yeah,
there's something to the 30-word answer, because then you get in the featured snippet and then people want to learn more, they'll click on you. I think there's value there too. But if that's every keyword you have is just a 30-word, it basically can be summed up in a 30-word answer and the rest is filler, and it can be put in a featured snippet, that's probably dangerous, because if you get replaced in the featured snippet, you're done. And if more people search for that with their voice than with no search results, then you're done too. So the end of the day, the answer is really just to create, you want to create a site that you don't even need to rely on Google, as crazy as that sounds coming from me. Like, you want direct traffic
right.
is the best source of traffic, because it's just someone's mind. The same way I go to ESPN every day. I don't search for like sports news and click on the first result. Or when I bought my iPhone, I didn't search for like best smartphones, click on a result and be like, oh, let me see this. No, I just went to the Apple store and bought one. So that's the best thing you can do to protect yourself, is just create this site that people directly visit. And that can protect yourself from some of these changes that are happening in SEO. But there's no doubt that there's fewer clicks on SEO than ever. And the direction is clearly moving away from clearly moving towards getting less traffic from Google as time goes on. But on the other hand, there's really not much you can do about it, because you can't affect the search result pages. So the best thing you can do is just roll with it and get as much traffic as you can from it, and get as many email subscribers and leads as you can while you can. And that's pretty much all there is to do. And then there's other channels out there, but like I mentioned, they're kind of a joke compared to SEO. So they're not even worth considering, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think you've done that. YouTube subscribers, email subscribers, and brand, right? So those three things, aside from SEO, can keep people coming to you through other channels, or because they're subscribed or following you in some way.
Yeah, definitely. And YouTube is almost an exception. I don't put that in the social media world, because so many people watch YouTube. Like, the stats on that are just madness. It's the second most popular website online, more than Facebook. Most people spend at least an hour a week on YouTube in the States. So it's kind of like TV. Like, if you're not on YouTube, it's becoming the new TV. So when people go to YouTube and you're not on there, it's going to be a huge problem coming up. Because what happens is it helps that direct traffic link happen between you and the website. Like, you just go to the website. Because when they go on YouTube and they see your videos a lot, they're going to remember, and they're going to visit you directly, and they can bypass any middleman like Facebook or Twitter or Google and go straight for your site, because video is such a powerful medium. Plus, like you mentioned, you can have them as a subscriber, so then they get notified whenever you put out something new. So you don't need a medium to get in front of them. They're subscribed to your channel.
Yeah, and one of the other things I was going to ask, but we just talk about briefly, and I don't want to keep you too long. That sun I see is moving onto your face, and I know you have things to do.
It does that. I'll move
we keep shifting. It's great. It seems like it was not accidental, but like as you were doing more video marketing through YouTube, you eventually started to realize or kind of play with, like, what are the ranking factors? Maybe why isn't this ranking better? And it seems like you've kind of developed a new sort of expertise or skill set in a way on like YouTube ranking. Is that kind of how things went?
It's exactly how things went. It's kind of like Gary Vee talks about, that you should document versus create. That all of us are doing stuff that's interesting, especially if you're in the trenches. If you're someone who doesn't do anything, it's irrelevant. But if you're like doing stuff and trying things, you're going to learn along the way. And all you really need to do is just document what you're doing. And all of a sudden you have amazing content, because you've actually done something and you just document it. So as I was trying to grow on YouTube myself for my own selfish purposes of just trying to grow my channel, I learned a lot about YouTube SEO, and it helped that I knew about Google SEO, because there's tons of overlap. The same company owns them. I'm sure they share a lot of secrets and whatnot between each other. And the algorithms are totally different, but there's some commonalities. And I was able to quickly get rankings for some tough keywords and get views and subscribers and all that stuff. And I basically just kind of like documented what I learned from failing and succeeding and along the way. And that's basically how it develops, is just like experimenting.
Really cool. I think I've run out of questions.
All right.
So yeah, where do we leave things? Like, where do you want to leave listeners with, or is there any kind of like, do you summarize this or something?
I don't really know. We covered a lot, so it's really hard to come up with like a one sentence summary that's like, here you go. I'm not a soundbite.
Do you have like a mantra or like a something that you live by, or like?
Not really. One thing I'm thinking a lot about lately is the expression that I did not invent: is good as the enemy of great. I love that expression, and I think it's so true. And if you apply it to everything you do, you really can't go wrong.
On that note, Brian Dean, thank you so much for being here. This has been awesome.
No worries, Tom. See you later.
As I had mentioned at the beginning, Brian has had a huge influence on me. I've learned a lot from him, and I really admire him. I learned about the skyscraper technique and gestographics. His videos are just so much fun and so awesome to watch. And actually, I didn't know he grew up in Rhode Island, which is where I went to school, so we were chatting about that. And he's really just the way I had imagined him. The way he comes across as his personality in videos and whatnot is just how he was in the interview. And I actually laughed so much that by the end of it, I was still laughing a little bit and trying to hold my laughter during the recording. And one little fun fact was his name in when we did the recording over Zoom is Style Still Matters. I forgot to ask him about that, but I just still think that's funny. So go check out Brian and learn more from him about SEO at Backlinko. So that's the word backlink with an O on the end, backlinko.com. He's got great video content on YouTube. Go check that out. So backlinko.com, and that's with Brian Dean. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe today, and you'll continue learning more from great thought leaders about how to succeed in digital marketing. And if you want to learn more about us, go to sureoak.com. That's SUREOAK.com. And I hope you have a fantastic week.